If you can give him a virtual clap your hands, if you got some streamers and some horns that you can blow out for your very own Chef Dan, please give a round of applause and welcome your very own Chef Daniel Bears.
Thank you. Good morning, all. Um, so thank you for that introduction. And today we're going to talk about eggs. I'm going to talk a little bit about how eggs are made up, as well as the different types of egg temps, and then show you a couple of composed dishes, some of my favorite breakfast dishes. So first thing I want to do is start by talking about we have multiple different colors in eggs and multiple different types of eggs. The ones that we're going to see most often are going to be white or brown eggs. The big difference here is really just the type of hen. So I know that brown eggs are a little bit more expensive. That's usually because the hens that produce the brown eggs are bigger, so it takes a little bit more money to feed them in the long run. And from there, we have multiple different types of eggs, from cage-free to pasture-raised to free-range to organic. Touching on those real quick. So cage-free just means not confined. So they're not going to be in a cage. They have access to outside. They will tend to stay mostly in the warehouse for most of the time. Pasture raised means that it was raised outside. So they are fed a natural feed, but they also have the ability to go out and eat grains and grass and insects outside. Free range chickens are typically for meat. So if it says free range, that really doesn't have anything to do with the egg. That would be our pasture raised, would be closest to free range, and free range, like I said, would be for your chicken breast, chicken thighs that you would cook at home. And then lastly, we have organic. So this means no cage. It has to be a specific type of food. It has to be organically approved food, and then no antibiotics unless they're really, really sick. And then you're allowed to give antibiotics to them. Cool. So those are a different type of eggs. I have some brown eggs here that I'm going to be using today. What I do want to talk about is the makeup of the egg. So the more that we understand the egg, the better we're able to cook it. So with the egg, we have multiple different parts. We have the shell, which is on the outside. It is slightly porous, which is good to know. So if you're storing it in your fridge or you're walking, you have something that really stinks in there, it will eventually affect the egg, and it'll come into the cooking, so you'll taste it slightly at the end. We have the yolk. We have something called the albumin, which is the egg white. And then it's called the chalaze. This is the little almost vein or line you see that holds the yolk in the albumin to keep it from moving around. And then we have an air bubble that will always sit at the bottom of the egg. So that's the makeup of our egg. Talked a little bit about the difference in colors and the different types of eggs. And now I'm going to show you guys how to make some different temperatures of eggs. One thing that I recommend is a really good nonstick pan. That will definitely save your life with eggs. As soon as your egg sticks, it's more likely to break, or you're going to pop the yolk and not get the type of egg that you're looking for. So I have a nonstick pan here. The second most important thing is going to be the heat. Heat controls everything. It doesn't need to be on high heat. I tend to keep it towards the lower side so that I'm able to watch it and cook it perfectly every time. So right now I'm going to get my pan heated up. Put a little bit of oil or butter in, your choice. I'm using olive oil this morning. And we're going to start with an over easy egg. So over easy is our fastest to cook. And one thing we do want to avoid with all of our eggs is any color on the eggs. We don't want any brown or searing unless specifically requested by a customer. So now that my pan's ready, I'm going to go ahead and drop an egg in. Awesome. So at this point, I don't have any of the whites cooking, so I'm going to turn my heat up. I will know it's ready to flip once I can't see through the egg white into the pan. Right now, it is all clear, nothing's cooking. So once we get our heat up, I'll be able to start cooking the whites. And then, like I said, once I sear that white on the bottom, I'm going to swirl the pan around, and then I should be able to flip it. I know flipping can be a struggle at times. So what I do recommend with flipping, take it or leave it, is to take a pan into your bathtub or shower and use dried rice, and then practice the motion. I call it the choo-choo train motion. So if you think about the wheels on a choo-choo train, or you can think about it like a water balloon toss. If you've ever done a water balloon toss with a friend, so you're going to toss somebody a balloon, if I were to just stand here and wait for the balloon to come, it would just slap into my hands and then it would break. Same thing when we are doing eggs, is we want to make sure that when we flip it up, that we also come back down with it softly so that we're able to catch it. All right, still turn the heat up, waiting for it to get a little bit more cooked on the bottom. Seasoning is always up to the chef. I tend to use a little bit of salt and pepper. So I have a salt and pepper mix that I'm going to sprinkle the top with, and then I'll sprinkle the other side when I flip it. Salt and pepper mix, as a reference, I usually do about 75% salt, 75 to 80% salt, and then 20 to 25% black pepper. All right, still getting that heat going for that white to cook along the bottom. And so as we go through the egg temps, I'll put it onto a plate and I'll try and cut it for you guys so you can see the difference and what it looks like. And then what we can see back here, this is my water for poached eggs, which I know can be intimidating, but I'm going to show you a really easy way to do that. Okay, so as I have the egg here, make sure you guys can see that. It's going to be a little tricky, but everything is cooked on the bottom. I can't see through it. So next thing I'm going to do is swirl it to make sure it's not sticking. If it's sticking, I can always use a rubber spatula to get it unstuck. We never want to use a metal spatula in a non-stick pan because it will scratch and then everything will end up sticking to it. So now that I have my base egg white cooked, I'm going to go ahead and flip it. And the way I like to flip it is put the yolk at the bottom right here. If the yolk is up here and I go to flip it, it's going to end up slamming down in the pan. So now that I'm down here, I'm just going to give it a nice toss and bring it back down and catch it. Come back down with it so it doesn't break. Then I'm going to let it sear on this side. Again, I'm looking for no brown on the egg. If I do start getting brown, I'm going to turn the heat off and remove from heat instantly, and then flip it back and forth. At this point, so I've turned the heat up pretty high so the side cooked much quicker. I'm going to look for the pretty side of the egg, the one that I want to present on my plate. Great. Awesome. So I like this side best. I'm going to hit it with a little bit of salt and pepper. All right. And then at this point, I do have a decent amount of oil in the pan. I'm going to slide it on. I'm going to take a paper towel. I'm going to dab that oil off so it's not just pooling oil. Eggs are a relatively healthy meal and good for the body, so I don't want to cloud it with a bunch of oil. All right, turn my heat back down. Let me make sure you guys can see this. All right, so I have my egg right here. And as I cut into it, this is an over easy egg. So I should have runny yolk, and then you'll see a little bit of runny white around the edges of it, which will be right here. It looks like it's mixing with the yolk, but that's going to be your over easy egg. So we don't have any brown on it, no burning, which is beautiful. You can see a little bit of the white down here at the base of the yolk, and that's our over easy. All right. Next, we're going to move on to an over medium egg. The pan should be good to go. I still have a little bit of oil in here. With this, my trick and technique. So as when you do an egg, there's that thin white that runs out instantly and then a bigger white bubble. That white bubble, I'm going to take a spatula and I'm just going to pop it and poke it. With over medium, we want the runny whites to be all the way cooked. So if I pop it and poke it, it allows it to run out as opposed to sitting close to the yolk. And if I were to leave it there, I would end up cooking more of the yolk and the yolk wouldn't be runny. Okay. I'm going to swirl it and get that white all the way around. Turn down my heat a little bit. Nice. This one's definitely going to cook faster now that the stove's ready to go. Same thing, going to give a nice flip, come down and catch it. And you can see with this egg, you can see it's way more spread out than the over easy egg because I popped that white, so the white started to run, which is perfect because I want that to cook. All right, same thing as the over easy egg. I'm just looking for a little bit of a sear on the side. I'm not trying to get any color on it or make it chewy or get that. It's almost like a plastic wrap consistency if you overcook the egg too much around the side. One thing I do want to talk about when cooking is it's a full body experience. You want to be able to see it. You want to be able to hear it. I can hear the oil popping, so I know where my heat is. I want to be able to touch it and look at it. And most importantly, I want to be able to eat it. All right. So as I'm swirling it now, I'm not so much swirling to make sure it's not sticking. What I want to do is I want to make sure that there's nothing by the yolk that isn't cooked, because I want the egg whites cooked all the way through. Great. And as I touch it, I can feel that it's good to go. So this is the over medium egg. Again, I didn't season this one, but we have the over medium egg right here. Okay, so as I cut into it, you can see there's no runny whites. All the whites are cooked, and once I get to the yolk, I still have a beautiful runny yolk. Awesome. That's our over medium egg. Next, we're going to go into, let's go into our over medium well egg. Okay, so over medium well is tricky because you want to cook some of the yolk, but again, we don't want any color on it. So at this point, I really want to make sure I have low heat. Gotcha. I see that question up there. An over well egg has a broken yolk. Fun fact, an over well egg does not have a broken yolk. That is only going to be on over hard eggs. Over the range of eggs goes from over easy to over medium well to over well. And so that, think of it like a steak. So you can go from rare to well done. A little bit more oil. Great. And then knowing that I'm doing an over medium well egg, I do want to pop the white again because I want the whites cooked, but this time I want some of the yolk cooked. So I'm going to go ahead and go in there and spread out some of the whites so that it cooks evenly. And then again, this one I want to use really low heat so that I don't get that color on it that will end up giving it a burnt plastic feel in your mouth. Again, so I talked about the poached water a little bit earlier. To make a poached egg, basically we want water at a low simmer to just below boil. And then from there, we're going to add vinegar to it. So, or some form of acid. I like to use white vinegar. We don't want to add too much, otherwise it will be really acidic and really sour tasting. So I'm just going to add a splash. Great. And the acid here is really going to keep the egg together so we get that beautiful ball of a poached egg. With poached eggs, it's the same as the eggs that we just talked about. So you can have poached soft to all the way up to poached hard. Same concept in the sense of poached soft is going to have runny whites and runny yolk. Poached medium is going to have no runny whites. And then poached hard is like a hard-boiled egg without the shell. So essentially, you can make a hard-boiled egg at home. If you get tired of peeling the shells, you can drop it in water and just cook it all the way through like that. All right, for the over medium well, so it's not sticking, I can see that all the whites are cooked at the bottom of the pan. Gonna flip it and let it set. Nice. All right, so after we do the over medium well, I'm going to show you an over hard egg and how I break it. I tend to break the over hard egg. I tend to pop the yolk and then I give it a little bit of a swirl so it's nice, even, and flat. You can pop the yolk and let it run out, and then it'll look like a fried egg at the point where all the yolk's in the middle, and then you have your white cooked around the outside, or you can swirl it and create this beautiful texture. Good. Again, here I'm looking for the pretty side of the egg, the one that I want on the plate. And then this one I'm going to season. Nice. Beautiful. And then after we do the over hard, I'm going to talk about scrambled eggs. So scrambled eggs, one thing I do recommend is scrambling it up in a bowl ahead of time instead of doing it in the pan. If you do it in the pan, you end up getting the difference in color of white and yellow as it cooks unevenly. But by mixing it in a bowl ahead of time, I'm able to get this one fluid color that looks really pretty on the plate. Okay, this egg is almost ready. So what I'm looking for here, that I'll show when I bring it up to the camera, is I'm looking for the yolk to be slightly seared. On the other two, you can see no searing on it, so it wasn't this opaque color. But on this one, I want it to look like the yolk is a little bit cooked. So it's going to be slightly runny in the center, but not as runny. Again, think of it like steak, from rare to well done, or over easy to over well. Beautiful. Okay. So this is the over medium well egg. As we get close to the camera, so right here, you can see the yolk is starting to set. So it's not going to run as much. But being an over medium well egg and not fully cooked, when I cut into it, perfect. When I cut into it, we're only going to have a little bit of runny yolk in the center. And that's a beautiful over medium well egg. All right. And next we're going to do an over hard. Over hard again, tiny bit of oil or butter, whatever your preference is. Great. Okay, so at this point I have my egg in the pan. Before I get going with this, I'm going to pop the yolk, chop it up. So I have it chopped up, and then I'm going to give it a slight swirl around the pan. Not quite scrambled, still within the whites, but I'm going to make it nice and level all the way across. And this one, since it's level and flat, and I'm not worried about the yolk cooking or not cooking, I can definitely turn up my heat on this, but I do have to pay attention to it. The higher your heat, the more you have to pay attention to it. And this one, same as the overwell in the sense of it's the way that it's cooked. I want it cooked all the way through. Still don't want brown on it. All right. A little bit of seasoning, meaning salt and pepper. All right, so same thing as we did with the first egg. So I have the bottom seared, so that's how I know it's ready to flip. And I'm gonna let it set until everything in it's cooked, so there's nothing running. As I'm doing this, I'm gonna pay attention to my poached water. And when you have poached water going for a long time, you wanna make sure that you keep adding water to it. If it gets too shallow, the egg will end up sticking to the bottom. So even though it has the acid in there to hold it together, there's no oil to keep it sticking from the bottom. Beautiful. Make sure I have salt and pepper on both sides. Perfect. All right. So for the over hard egg, we can see right here that because I did the swirl, I don't have all the yellow in one area. I was able to move it around. It's not quite as scrambled, but you have the yolk evenly distributed, and it creates a nice level platform so that when I cut into it, everything should be cooked evenly. Perfect. So as I've cut into it, there's nothing running on the plate. It's just an over hard egg. That's awesome. I see that a lot of you guys eat eggs throughout the week, a decent amount of eggs, and I see that sometimes you guys make mistakes. That's awesome. That's how you learn. I make mistakes a lot of the time, and eggs can be finicky. Every egg is different, right? So next we're gonna do a poached egg. So I have my water boiling or simmering in the back. I've added the vinegar. I can smell it. It's not too strong. And then I'm going to create something that creates this vortex that also helps hold the egg together. So I'm going to spin, 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 spin. And it'll create this little vortex like in the center that I'm going to drop the egg right into. With poached eggs, I always like to drop one more than I need. So this time I'm going to drop two. The same thing. Every egg is different, and I don't have control over it like I do in the pan. As soon as it's in the water, it's on its own. So just to be safe, I'm going to make an extra.
Chef Dan, why is it that you drop one extra?
I drop one extra so that I have, like I said, so that I have the extra. With eggs being so finicky, and we talked about sometimes it makes mistakes, sometimes it's us, and sometimes it's the eggs. So knowing that, I want to show you guys a perfect poacher, and if I did one, then we'd have to do another one if I made a mistake.
Perfect. Thank you.
So what you can't see in here, and I'm gonna have a hard time turning the pot, is the bubbles are actually keeping it off of the bottom. So if you think about a pot that's boiling, if you have a rolling boil, like a high boil, those bubbles are gonna end up like punching the egg and end up breaking it. If you have a slow simmer, it's just gonna be a gentle caressing right into the shape that you want it to be. And then we're gonna do a poached soft egg, which takes about a minute and a half, depending on your water, depending on the size of the egg. So while those are cooking, I'm going to wipe out my pan, make sure it's nice and clean, and I'm going to get the scrambled eggs ready. With scrambled eggs, since I use dairy, I'm going to throw a little bit of heavy cream in there. I'm going to cook this one in butter. Beautiful. And then I have a little bowl that has 2 eggs in it, just 2 eggs dropped right into it. I'm going to take a whisk. I'm going to pop the yolks. I'm going to really mix it up to make sure it's an even color all the way around. Beautiful. So here I don't have it separated. You can see that everything is good to go. This is why I mix it up in a bowl ahead of time, so I get an even color as opposed to that white and yellow separation like we have with the overhard egg. Here my butter's about done, so I'm going to move that off of the heat, and our poachers should be ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and pull those out. What I recommend doing is using a slotted spoon, meaning having holes in the bottom so that the water doesn't end up in the bowl because it will keep cooking at that point.
Hey, Chef Dan, I'm not sure if you answered this question, but Jody had a question. And one of the things she was saying was that she loses a lot of white when she poached eggs. Is that normal?
So it depends on the vinegar. So in my water, I have maybe the size of a dime. I have a little bit of white floating around there. The acid, what's really going to keep it together, and then again, that vortex. So finding that balance of the acid to hold it together will keep the whites with the egg, as well as how strong the vortex is to suck the egg together. So,
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
of course. All right. So this is what a poached egg is going to look like. Normally we see them on Benedicts or with hollandaise. I'm going to flip it over to its pretty side. Beautiful. It will always have a tail because as you drop it in with gravity, that white's going to separate from the egg as the weight pulls down and the white stays up. So you'll see in a lot of restaurants, you can pinch the tail off so you have a beautiful poached egg. And then the next step is to cut into it. Keep cutting that backwards, huh? All right, so on this poached egg, so you can see the yolk running out and the runny whites, and I have the majority of the whites cooked. This is a beautiful creamy egg. It adds texture and creaminess to most of your dishes. It's definitely a presentation egg, like something that you want to show off. So the more that you practice that, the better you'll get at it. Get this out of the way. Beautiful. So that's it for poached eggs. And then lastly, we're going to finish up with a quick scramble. So now I'm about to throw my eggs into the saute pan. I'm going to put it back on heat. Finish whisking the 2 eggs. I'm going to add just a touch of heavy cream. It's going to make it a little bit more fluffy and give it a more full mouthfeel. And I didn't show you that. I put about a tablespoon in for 2 eggs worth. Now that we have everything in here, I'm going to throw it into the pan. This is one that we can do on high heat, as long as we pay attention to it. Same thing. We're not looking for any color on it. I'm not looking for it to be dry. I know we've all probably overcooked some eggs, but I also don't want it to be really runny. So I want it to be soft and fluffy, but not runny. With scrambled eggs, we can't really see through it to see how far cooked it is. So I'm going to use the spatula. I'm going to move it just around the outside, and I'm going to push it to the center, usually where most of the heat is. Eggs will cook faster around the outside because the pan is a little bit thinner. So if I keep moving from the outside to the center, it's going to keep it from burning. I'm going to throw in a pinch of salt and pepper. Great. So with the scramble, right now I still have a decent amount of running. I don't know if you guys can see that it's pulling up here. I'm going to take it off of heat and turn the heat off. The pan is still hot, so it's going to finish cooking it as I move it around. All right. I think that's definitely something important to pay attention to is the heat, heat, heat. You don't need high heat for everything. And the higher the heat, the more you have to pay attention to it. So I took it off of heat. It was only about 75% cooked, but now I have it 100% cooked. So you can see here, as I tilt the plate, nothing's running out, but it still has that sheen to it, so it's nice, light, and fluffy. All right. So I believe that's all I have for egg techniques for you guys this morning. I hope you guys learned something and are able to take this home. The big takeaways that I recommend, the 3 big takeaways are going to be number 1, a nonstick pan, and then making sure that you wipe the pan out. We don't ever want to use metal in it. We don't want to use any harsh soaps in it. And keep this pan clean and good, and you'll have good eggs. Number 2 is paying attention to your heat and where it's at. It's okay to be low and have it take some time. That will just prevent it from being a problem later. And then I 100% forgot the last thing. Practice, 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 practice. The more you practice, the more you'll have beautiful dishes. This did not happen overnight. I happened to work in breakfast for about 7 years of my career. So I had broken many eggs. I had made many mistakes with eggs, but over time I was able to perfect it and feel comfortable making it. So here's some plated dishes that I recommend. My 2 favorite breakfasts. This is 2 eggs over hard with some toast points and some rosemary roasted red bliss potatoes. And then I made a classic, an English breakfast. I did it without the mushrooms. I'm not the biggest fan of mushrooms, but this is going to be your eggs over medium, your sausage, your toast, your beans, and your grilled tomato. So as you guys continue to practice eggs, eventually your skills will get better and you'll be able to make these beautiful dishes at home just like I did.
Hi, Chef. Sorry, there's a question about the poached eggs.
Of course.
If you could kind of just cover that. They had asked if it's okay if you're putting, more than 1 egg in there, and you had a really great explanation. So if you could just recover that really quick.
Of course, yes. So it depends on the size of your pot. The smaller the pot, the more crowded it's going to be. So this pot, I would say, is good for 3 or 4. The more eggs you have in there as well, it's going to take up more of the acid. So you're going to have to add more acid and pay attention to that. But you can definitely do 10, 20, 50, however many poached eggs you would like, depending on the size of the pot. Any other questions?
We have Jody again, just kind of confirming that the vinegar level determines the white being contained.
It helps, yes. That and the vortex. That swirl that you do in water, where it'll leave like this, almost like a tornado style vortex in the center, and that's where you want to drop the egg. Those 2 things, coupled with how high your water is, are going to keep the egg together.
Now, Chef Dan, I have a question for you. It just sounds to me that you know a lot about eggs. Okay, I'm an egg eater. I love eggs, but it just sounds like you just know a whole lot. Where can you attribute all of your knowledge and all of your skill set from the egg history on where you learned all of this?
Of course. So there's multiple things. First and foremost, attending school is where I was able to take a breakfast cooking class, and that's where I learned a lot of the basics. And I wasn't at this skill level yet, but I was able to start. Number 2 is I worked in a field that worked with eggs very frequently, so I was able to practice every single day. And then lastly, and most importantly, is when I'm at home or in my free time, I love to read cookbooks. So I will continuously be reading and learning and seeing new things. So school gave me the base, and then time in the kitchen gave me the experience, and then curiosity from reading allowed me to learn a little bit of history and different types of knowledge about eggs.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Do we have any other questions out there for Chef Dan? Um, I want to make sure we get all your curiosity, all of your questions out. When you leave there, when you leave here today, I want to make sure that you know how to make some great eggs. Go out and try it today. Once everything is over, just go out and buy a crate of eggs and start practicing and reading and trying everything that you can to get a life Chef Dan. But I definitely want to make sure I don't want to sidestep anybody. I want to make sure you guys have any questions at all for Chef Dan. I have another question from Mia right here. She says, "What other acid can she use?"
Fantastic. Almost any acid will work. I prefer white vinegar because it doesn't change the color of the eggs. I have used lemon juice. It's not as strong as vinegar, so you have to use more when you use lemon juice. I've used apple cider vinegar if I'm going to pair it with apples, so it has that slight apple cider flavor. I don't recommend using a dark vinegar, such as balsamic or sherry vinegar, because that will change the outside color of the egg. And it's unfortunately not usually the most beautiful. It ends up being like this gray brown as opposed to a purple or red. But you can use any acid you would like, but it will affect the flavor and the color of the egg.
Awesome. Jared has a question also. He was asking, what's the vinegar to water ratio for the poached eggs?
That is a great question. I do not have it memorized. So in this pot, I would say, all right, so a 2 quart pot, I used about 2 tablespoons. So let's go with 1 tablespoon to 1 quart of water. Over time, it will become experience and with practice. So I can smell it right now, and I can tell how strong the vinegar is, and I know it's at the level that I want it to be. But to start, I would start with 1 tablespoon of white vinegar per 1 quart of water, and then adjust from there. If it's not holding together, we need to add some more acid, and if it's too vinegary, we can always do less vinegar next time.
Awesome. Awesome. And we're going to take one more. We have from Nika. I think it's Nika, Nikka. Please forgive me if I'm saying that wrong. And the question that she asking, can skim milk or any other milk alternative instead of the heavy cream with the scramble, will that have the same texture?
Of course. So heavy cream is going to have a texture that I prefer. They will have different textures, but you can use any sort of basically fat that you would like to mix in there. So if you choose almond milk or skim milk or coconut milk, or you can use whole milk, table cream. You can use whipping cream if you want, but it'll end up being a little bit sweet. So you can use any type of cream or liquid that you would like to throw in there. It will change the texture, and heavy cream is great because it aerates really well, so it's able to keep the eggs fluffy.
Awesome. Well, guys, that will be all the questions that we're going to take from Chef Dan. Chef Dan, I want to thank you for getting up this Saturday morning and spending some time with us. Your knowledge is impeccable. We really appreciate everything. And you know what? I feel as if I learned something. I like eggs. I'm gonna go try some stuff. Once I get finished talking to everybody right here, I'm gonna go ahead and try me some stuff on in my stove, and then I'm gonna go ahead and send you an email, let you know how I did, see if I did it correct or not. Okay.
Sounds great.
Awesome. Outside of that, Dan, Chef Dan, we really appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. You enjoy the rest of your day.
Of course.
Thanks,
Thank
Chef
you guys
Dan.
so much, and have a
Thank
great rest of
you.
your day.
Awesome.
Thank you as
Thank you
well.
so much. Awesome.